Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Good afternoon, I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm going to be your host and your presenter today for our Capital Summit preview. Yes, Pandemic Webinar Series number 134 is going to be on the Capital Summit preview to try to give you some more information to decide which is your best option for attending the Capital Summit this year. It's also going to have some ideas and a little bit more detail on who the presenters, the topics, and a lot of the other things that are going to happen on Friday's Capital Summit that'll be both online and also in person at Siracoso Community College in Bishop. And just a little reminder, tomorrow you get a day off between the preview of the summit and the summit is going to be the state of the Office of the Small Business Advocate. And you can join for a virtual open house and discuss some of the issues of the state of California. Our small business advocate, Tara Lynn Gray, will be there to handle all of your questions potentially and provide you with a lot of information about some of the programs that are coming up. The actual registration link will be in the chat. So we're into the fourth quarter of 2022. Look at us go. And it's October the 5th today. So as you're probably aware, we're going to be doing a Capital Summit, our first one since 2019. We're excited to offer both viewing tips today for both those attending live and those that are looking to access this summit online. So the Capital Summit is going to be Friday, our first attempt at a hybrid event in a venue that we haven't done an event. So it's going to be interesting. It always is, isn't it? So have a little bit more information on that coming up toward the latter half of our program today. We'll talk about some of the funding, investment, and grant opportunities from the dozens. Literally, there are dozens of funding sources. And really, one thing I like to say is nowadays, there are so many different ways to get a small business funded. If you're either starting that business or if you're looking for funds, it's not easy. That's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of hard work in order to get funding for a small business in most cases. But there's a lot of alternatives out there. And the Small Business Development Center, it's a little frustrating when people will go to one or two sources that maybe isn't always the best source. People think they might be for small business funding, but you're going to get dozens upon dozens of them on Friday. And look at this, the state Small Business Credit Initiative is rolling out at the summit. We have been talking about this. This was part of the ARPA stimulus from last year. So basically about 18 months ago, where this $10 billion nationally was going to go to small business form of credit. And we are going to be rolling those out at the summit. Presentations from both of the agencies in California that will be handling both of those two programs that are coming. Remember, there's almost $1 billion in new capital for small businesses that are coming. Much of this is going to be debt, and some of this is going to be some type of venture funding. So it is kind of exciting that this new capital, it was nice of them to wait to this very moment, but this is the way it worked out. So did you get a COVID-19 EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan? Your payments and other challenges that you might have with that lie ahead. And so we'll touch on that briefly today on October 5th. And let me give you the first of probably a few reminders that next week on October 12th, we will have most of the program dedicated toward making those payments. And then other things that might come out of this is that if you got an EIDL payment, then you have a UCC1 filing by signing your paperwork, your actual contract for that particular EIDL. So you had to sign an agreement, a loan agreement, an arrangement through SBA. So your LLA, if you sign that, then there's potentially some other challenges that might be lying ahead for you. And that is, what's the collateral position going to be? I really don't know what that is right now. And it might vary between lenders. It might vary between the size of your EIDL loan. But those are something that we hope to have totally cleared up by potentially as early as Friday at the summit, but also if not, maybe next Wednesday. So everything about EIDL is coming up in the next week. So keep posted for that if you received an EIDL loan. Our economic corner today will look at rising interest rates on business loans. I believe I heard it reported today that home mortgage rates climbed to 7% for the first time in a long time. 7% back in the day, not a bad mortgage, but after the rates for the last decade or 2 decades, definitely higher than we had seen. And also this brings up the point of what to do with business funding now. What is the cost of your business funding? What is the cost of loans going forward? Really, one key to look at is if your funding is a loan, a fixed loan or a variable loan as far as interest rates go. And does your lender even provide the interest rate for you? All of this will be coming up a little bit on the economic corner today. So we'll have a quick update on pandemic era programs that are still available. Maureen will jump in with Marketing Moment with Maureen, no maybe about it. For those baseball fans out there, wasn't it nice to see Aaron Judge hit number 62? Number 62, home run number 62. Aaron Judge, who is now threatening, in my opinion, and my baseball wisdom and knowledge, to become the greatest baseball player ever born and raised in the San Joaquin Valley. My number one on that list right now is a guy they used to call Tom Terrific, Tom Seaver, who was born in Fresno County. But Aaron Judge is certainly, with the American League home run record now in his back pocket, by hitting number 62, breaking Roger Maris, American League, sitting right there as well. So as always, once you get me off baseball, and it is October, we'll have your questions and a poll. So let's go to that poll question today and see what we got for you. Just a very simple poll today, one question. Did some of the research and dug through a wonderful publication that I like to look at because it tells you trends and surveys and borrowers' thoughts and lenders' ideas. And it comes from the Federal Reserve Bank that does a credit survey. And they did, where are small businesses most likely to apply? So the question that we have today is, where are small businesses most likely to apply for funding? Is it a large bank, a small bank, an online lender, a finance company, or a credit union? So you get 5 choices, and this is a national survey done by the Federal Reserve Bank. It's their annual credit survey that they credit a lot of different entities and really kind of a lot of areas. And what they're asking is, where are small businesses most likely to apply? So you're given 5 choices, it being either a large bank, a small bank, an online lender, a finance company, or a credit union. So I'm going to give you one last second to jump into our one poll question today. And the one poll question is, where do small businesses where are they most likely to apply for a small business loan when they need one, when they need capital? Is it a large bank, small bank, online lender, finance company, or credit union? Okay, I have almost 60% of you participating. And what we will do is potentially in the poll right now, and we will share the results with you. And most of you, half of you say an online lender, which is interesting because I have a little bit on online lending from this same source, the Federal Reserve Bank today. 50% and 38% of you suggest a credit union and 13% a finance company. The correct list in order is the list you're looking at right now. So it's a large bank is number 1, a small bank, an online lender, a finance company, and lastly, a credit union. And again, please recall that this is a national survey done by the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, So let's stop sharing that and let's move along. So let's start off today with our COVID-19 EIDL update. And like we've been mentioning the last month or so, is that repayment begins soon for many recipients who received the COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan. Recall that there was a sizable amount of time that was given to most applicants. I believe it was 30 months from the time that they received the loan to where they had to start making payments. So that period is coming up for many people, and it's going to be kind of a sliding scale up for those that receive the EIDL. Recall that the disaster loan proceeds are not forgivable. It was not forgivable like the PPP. Where you're going to really want to start on this is you're going to want to get some account information and go to the SBA Capital Access Financial System with the fine acronym of CAFS. And that is where you need to set up and get things going. There's a place online where you can look up the account. Thank you, Maureen, for adding that to our chat today. And you can log into basically CA Web, which is short for the Capital Access, at sba.gov and a few other things. And then what you're going to want to do is to set your account up in there, and then you will submit your payment through pay.gov. So that's for those of you that have the EIDL. There'll be a lot more information on this next week. With the EIDL program, there was, some criminal activity going on around it. Some people are reporting in identity theft now that they're finding out that they supposedly have a bill to pay with the SBA for actually the EIDL loan that they did not receive. So if you think that you were the victim of an identity theft, ID theft records at sba.gov or call your Fresno district office will be a good way to deal with that. And then also, next week, as a reminder, number 135, we'll be bringing back Israel Lara Jr., who was with us for quite a bit of the SBA programs during the pandemic. And he has been doing a lot also at the Fresno district. He does a webinar there as well. But it's really focused on the EIDL and issues that you might have if you had a EIDL loan. And again, that's the COVID EIDL. And the reason we differentiate that is because there are several here in California. There's potentially droughts, of course, and there's occasionally a flood. Not too many hurricanes that go on, or occasionally there's an earthquake. So oftentimes there are other fire-related disasters that are still called EIDL, but they're not the COVID-19 EIDL. So on our economic corner today, our side of the relevant economic news that is going on. So really, one thing that I think is important for those that are seeking funding, especially debt funding, at a time when interest rates are moving, is to try to project what the interest rates are going to be. So there's going to be a number of debt programs at this Capital Summit talked about. Most of them are going to be variable by nature. Generally, they will float anywhere, just as a rule of thumb, they'll float around 3 points over the prime rate. Fixed rates programs do exist. For example, the SBA 504 loan from our friends at Midstate Development Corporation that do the land and building and equipment loan program, the 504 program. A good portion of that loan can be fixed, or all of it, depending on the bank. So a good thing to do is to kind of look at interest rates and try to project where you think that they're going to go. And then on something not even tied to interest rates, it's really interesting to watch this big retail as they struggle with inventory gains. So a lot of our smaller businesses, they have kind of got stuck with a little more inventory than they want, but it happens to the big guys too. The big guys with all their forecasting and with their market clout, with their suppliers and their logistics and everything like that, you still can get caught with inventory, more inventory than you really want or really need. So that's happening with a lot of firms, a lot of particularly apparel firms and other type of department store type businesses that are in retail. And a lot of them are getting inventory and having inventory. And it goes back to when we had the cargo problem. We had the logistics problems at the port and getting things in. Also, customer preferences changed. And now what we have is we have a downturn. We have a downturn that seems to be on its way and gathering a little bit of steam. So with consumers spending less, inventory is not going to turn over or roll out quite as often as it did before. So it's time. It's time to jump to Maureen for an early edition of our marketing moment with our marketing maven, Maureen. Maureen, take it away.
Okay, let's get going here if I can find it. Hang on a second. There we go. All right. So one of the things that I think is always fun, well, I guess if I would start it here, that would help. Okay. Is when I'm working with clients on marketing is to try to keep track of your competition. It's important because you want to see what's going on out there, right? You got to stay abreast of what's going on in the marketplace. But we're just going to look today at how to check out your competition on Facebook because it's real simple and easy to do. Whoops. So first thing you want to do is, hopefully you can see down at the bottom here where it's Facebook. Basically, you go to the ad library on Facebook. I have the URL in the lower left, which I cannot see because I've got a bar over it, but that's what you type in is Facebook ad library, okay? So this is the first thing that'll come up. I know it says Meta, but it's Facebook. And you'll be able to check out all kinds of stuff. And trust me, this can be a time sucker, you know, just like Facebook can be a time sucker. It's kind of fun to see what people are doing, businesses and such. So the first thing is when you go in here, so you're going to select your country. I originally looked to see if they had it by state, but it's by country. And then you have to pick what kind of ads. You can see there all the different ones there. I just picked for purposes of what we're doing today, all ads. And then you type in your keyword or advertiser. So I did not want to pick anybody out in our group or anything. So what I did was I just put in Bakersfield. But if you wanted to, if let's say you're a restaurant or a CPA firm or whatever, and you know, obviously the name of your competitor that you want to go check out, type it in there, okay? So what I did was, like I said, I put in Bakersfield, and what it came up with was almost, it's 4,900 results using it as a keyword search, right? So the two things I'm going to show you here that popped up utilize the word Bakersfield in it. So this first one you can see here, and gosh, in October, this Camp Transformation Center Bakersfield had a lot of ads. I think there were like about 6 of them or so, targeting both men and women. So let's see. So then what I did was I thought I'd pull this one up and to show you what it looked like. So you can see everything here that they've got with their graphic and what they're offering and so forth. And then when it says you can click for more info, here, look at this whole thing that it pulled up that they're offering. So that's what they've got going on in October right now. They've got all different kinds of ways that you can call them or you can click on it or whatever. But if you're a gym and you're wanting to find out what the competition is doing out there, and right now there's all kinds of stuff out there as far as gyms go, this is a good place to go and look things up. Beyond that, one of the things that I thought was interesting, this just for me was really cool, is that Mercedes-Benz of Bakersfield. I like this because, for one reason, because these ads are really simple that they put in here. Very simple. And I like that because, you know, people have the attention span of a gnat. So a lot of times you want something that'll grab their eyes and right away, right? So here they've got where, here's one more reason to invest in a Mercedes-Benz van for your business. You can get it for less with a Section 179 tax deductions. And then if you look underneath the graphic there, it's like up to $27,000 in tax deductions. That caught my eye. And then over here, if you've been somebody who's gotten a recall on whatever they have, this is very simple too. You know, let us take care of your recall. If I had something like that, I'd click that contact us button. Anyway, so the point with all of this is just that if you want to go and take a look at, your friends, your neighbors, your, competitor down the street, just type in Facebook ad library and you can check it out. There you go, Kelly.
Hey, well, great. Fantastic. I think I might check out that recall also. And while you're at it, those striker vans, I'm starting to see everywhere on the road these days, those camping vans.
Oh, I am too. They're all over the place.
Those things are pretty sweet. Can you have
Yeah.
one delivered?
Hey, and if you can get a tax break on it, what the heck?
Tax break, yeah. All I would need is a bunch of income from a self-employment venture in order to access that.
And I'm sure we've got people like that out there.
Just not me. Okay, well, thank you. And just giving you the reminder that we generally will do is it's been updated. Look at that. Last week's cybersecurity with Bill Britton and Henry Danielson is on the list. So cybersecurity, a few others, the California Dream Fund, HR, CR update, etc., a few other things. So we have our YouTube topics of interest that are there. So that's good to know that every one of our webinars, with the exception of a couple, are on YouTube. So also mentioning the fact that we're going to be maybe looking for capital out there, just a little reminder of some of the tools that are in the SBDC toolbox. We have the live planning, business planning software. We try to access quite a few of those licenses in the Central California region, and also are getting much more proficient and better at using that for financial projections, in addition to other financial projections that many of you will need while accessing capital. Really, one of the things that's really underappreciated, I believe, is actually going after and doing a crowdfunding campaign. And we have assistance through some of our consultants and through some of our students that have led or done successful crowdfunding campaigns. Got some short topic videos coming, and also some student interns. Those are all along the way. Okay, let's move on to the Capital Summit portion of this today. So our Capital Summit is coming up. Again, it's being offered two different ways. It's being offered either via Zoom or in person. There's really going to be advantages to both. Obviously, via Zoom, you don't have to travel, but really the in-person aspects, they really get the access to the presenter. All of our presenters usually will make themselves available for as long as needed afterwards, after they speak, and it really gives you the opportunity to define and start building that relationship, to maybe exchange and get a business card and just maybe mention your project, even if you don't want to talk about it in more detail. Obviously, via Zoom, that travel time that you save really kind of puts it on you to then get in contact with the individual, gets in contact with the presenter via email. So you're going to want to make sure you get the email and be able to contact. One thing, when we started doing Capital Summits in 2017, we did it kind of as, we like to still refer to it as a reverse Shark Tank. Yeah, we flipped the Shark Tank. We put basically the sharks up there and had them detail their programs, and allowed pretty much the small businesses, those wanting to start a small business, one we're looking for types of capital, to actually be sold by them. So obviously there's a eligibility and there's requirements like there is for everything in life. There's eligibility for loan requirements and all kinds of things. The one thing we wanted to do is we wanted to minimize the eligibility, because what you're going to get is you're going to get 15 minutes, you're going to get a new speaker up there, and they're going to talk about their successes, briefly define what their eligibility is for the program, and to show and demonstrate to you how their capital is being used by others. So being able to see pictures and projects and other things that are out there, we feel is really beneficial for those. Again, we had one presentation in 2018. The guy said there's basically money for everyone. And while I don't completely agree with that, there's a lot of truth to it as well, because there are so many different funding sources and ways that people can find money. And really the creativity of coming out and looking for capital and looking for pieces of capital. People love to walk in and say, oh, I need this $200,000 loan. but sometimes the 200,000 needs to come in 3 or 4 different chunks. It can come in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 different ways of accessing capital to get to that number that you're trying to get to. So a couple of ways there you see, and we appreciate our fine folks at Alta One Credit Union and the Sunstone Management Company, Sunstone Capital, for sponsoring this year's event and for really making our first hybrid events. So that is kind of the links and getting into it. What are some of the highlights going to be? Well, we're going to be talking about, I would assume, at least 50 different forms of capital. Yes, we have 9, 10 speakers, but in between those speakers, you will be fed 1 or 2 different other capital programs from people that can't be there, or just to keep this from being a 2-day event. So it'll be brief, but it'll give you information, how the programs work, where they're coming from. So we're going to have dozens of funding opportunities for new and existing businesses. And these can go down for as little as $5,000 and up to $10 million or more. Now, not too many people are looking for $10 million out there, but hey, it's nice to get the business up and going. And maybe a few years down the road say, yeah, okay, I heard about this $10 million program from, say, the Central Valley Fund, and I want to know more about it now. So it's good to always keep in mind, the way we look at capital at the SBDC is that most businesses, most individuals are only going to go through a capital search 1, 2, maybe 3 times. You're going to really only do that basically starting up your business, expanding your business, and that's going to pretty much be it, hopefully. So in doing that, you're going to need to know the programs that are available for you at the time. And you're going to need to have good guidance and advice on how to access and pull those together. But most importantly, it's important to know who is doing the deals out there, who is really funding particular programs, who are the ones making the difference. So we'll have programs coming for both startups and expansions. There'll be equity programs, and equity, the old definition of equity is basically the difference on your balance sheet between your assets and your liabilities. So what's the difference between what you own and what you owe? And that is basically the capital or access on a balance sheet. It's oftentimes also used in what I like to say the good old days, or just the old days for some. But equity used to also, and still kind of carries the same multiple meaning of being a provider of capital for individuals from angels and venture capital, where they take an ownership of that particular business. They take an equity share. So oftentimes when you deal with these programs, you have to be prepared to part with some of the ownership of that particular business. And really, when you've seen Shark Tank, you kind of see how that works, where the sharks are taking a piece of the business, and based on the market value or the perceived market value, capitalization value of that business. Really, the alternative sources are some of the ones that we work with the most. We'll be working on a ton of alternative programs and crowdfunding, hard money. We don't really kind of go out and say, go get yourself some hard money, but in some cases, it's one of the best sources out there. We'll talk about microloans and some of the credit-based programs. Obviously, our SBA programs will be discussed in pretty good detail, and financial programs and resources that you have never heard of, including, maybe I'll just save that one. So that's some of the things out there, and that's kind of what the summit is. We're excited. I've showed this for over a year, this particular flyer right here. I'm glad to really be now talking about what it's going to be. And there's going to be entities, the iBank and also the California Pollution Control Financing Authority. Both are going to have programs. The Treasurer's Office, capital access and collateral support programs through the California Pollution Control Financing Authority will be there in person. And we'll also have a representative who's representing the programs that are going to be a loan guarantee, and also a couple of venture capital, even geared toward underserved members of our community. So interesting to see when we find out more about the details of this. So who are our speakers? I think we have a fantastic lineup of speakers to talk about, and I can tell you what I think they're going to talk about. After the registration, if you're here in Bishop, you're going to find some really nice breakfast goodies from the Great Basin Bakery and a good cup of coffee before we start. We're going to welcome from Nate Greenberg, who is the new Chief Administrative Officer from Inyo County, Linda Kionis Vaughn with the Office of the Small Business Advocate will stop by and talk a little bit about the new iBank program. She'll talk about programs that have been developed and have been going on in the Office of the Small Business Advocate. A couple of those are the Dream Fund program that we talk about every single week. And also, it's also the California Micro Grant. So both of those programs came out of the Office of the Small Business Advocate. John Paul Lake, JP Lake, will be here with the Kern Venture Group. The Kern Venture Group is a network of angel investors that do particular projects and fund deals. He'll talk about a lot of the things that it takes to get into that. Our friend Keith Bryce from Mid-State Development Corporation will be next. Keith is one of the two original presenters back from 2017 when we hosted our first Eastern Sierra Capital Summit in Mammoth Lakes. And Keith, of course, will be talking about his SBA 504 program, just a bellwether program out there, works with a lot of different banks in that particular program to where you do end up with two pieces of financing out of the particular deals that Keith Bryce will do. So you'll see those and hear more about it, see some examples on the Eastern Sierra, a few projects funded and more should be funded every day. Then we'll go to Allison French Tubo, and she is with the California Pollution Control Authority and talk about the new programs that are rolling out. Remember, this is $1 billion. This is a ton of money coming through these essentially 5 programs that are being rolled out. Really looking forward to seeing the details on this. The collateral support program, I'm really interested in learning more about because I really can see it in certain loan applications to where you're short on collateral. At the SBDC, when we work with people, we're saying, gee, we basically go off of our old 5 C's of credit. You need good character, you need capital, you need the condition of your business and industry to be well. One of those C's is collateral. So the collateral aspect sometimes has killed deals because there's not enough security for traditional type lenders, even in SBA programs, to secure that deal. But this collateral support program, I just am really anxious to learn more to see how it could fill that gap for deals that are a little bit short of collateral. After our break, we get a bonus session. We'll get to meet Jennifer Whitney, and Jen's got a great project coming and going on in downtown Bishop. And she will be talking about the Opportunity Zone program, a program that she is looking to access for her particular project. She'll give you 5 minutes on opportunity zones, on why it makes sense for her, and 5 minutes on her own project. We'll then bring in the guy I like to refer to as the Grand Poobah, Curtis Clark, who's the Executive Director of the Central California SBDC region, and formerly a director who was out talking about these very same topics for numbers of years. Kurt leads that now for some of us to do that out in the field for him, and takes care of the meaningful work of administrating the SBDC program for 14 counties. But he'll be talking about the alternatives. And there are so many alternatives out there, many alternatives, so many that I won't mention any of them now. Craig Howes from Mission Bank will be here to talk about some of their government lending programs, particularly the SBA 7A program and probably the Community Advantage program, which is a smaller deal. And it's supposedly more money coming for microloans through SBA and other things. Hopefully we'll be able to learn more about that. 11:10, we'll bring in Stephanie Sievers, and she is the CEO of Alta One Credit Union. Recently, they announced that they had been awarded the first CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, in Kern County. And they have already made an application for funds Alta One Credit Union kind of has the same footprint of our SBDC, Kern, Inyo, and Mono counties. So it's great to hear that the first CDFI and some of the programs that they might be sharing out of that, and also building up SBA lending and other small business lending in the communities that Alta One serves. Our concluding speaker will be Eric Romero, and he is with Sunstone. Sunstone is a multifaceted, they're a lender, they are an EB5. EB5 is the Visa program, and they are an investor in projects. So he will talk about a lot of the many projects that they're starting to invest in already in rural areas, and some of the ones that are coming up that maybe they will be investing more in. And that's a wrap, and that's what it is. Again, in between these, yours truly gets to be the moderator, and I get to bring a lot of programs from people that have done this event in the past that aren't here. Not enough time in the day, not enough time in the program, but I'll be sneaking in a few slides for some of the micro programs out there. We talked about the Central Valley Fund on the big side of things. In between the micros and the big guys, we got all kinds of things. We have USDA, which has a rural division and does some really interesting work in some of the programs. So we'll pop a couple slides for you on that, and probably about another dozen or so programs that'll get us up to our 50 or more. Like I say, there's tons of capital out there, people. It is a lot of work to access capital. It is a lot of demand on your time. It takes a work, it takes a business plan, it takes projections. It takes a crowdfunding campaign of working that particular campaign, working it and knowing how it takes, what it takes to succeed and going that direction. So that's like pretty doggone good detail of what you're going to get. And who you're not going to get is some online lenders. And this is actually provided through the Federal Reserve credit survey that they do. So when we talk and you hear a lot about fintech, you hear a lot about online lenders. And online lenders are those that provide a variety of credit products in the short and longer term. But most of them are short term and lines of credit, merchant cash advances. And they're very much analytical driven. And for both the underwriting, so they make their decisions based on analytics, on what they've learned, and also their pricing, servicing, and delivering funds to borrowers. So all these are a little bit general, but the number of small businesses has been steadily grew in the years leading up to the pandemic, but then they declined. And it could have been the government response with the COVID-19 programs that were out there, but it did actually decline. So not really trying to single out online lenders, but they have been characterized by the Federal Reserve as firms that apply to online lenders are more likely to have fewer and newer employees, lower revenues, and weaker credit scores. So they're going to be firms that are more dangerous already, more teetering because of the weaker credit and the lower revenues, and being newer businesses with fewer employees. And a lot of this has been our Black and brown businesses that have applied, according to the Federal Reserve Bank. Online lenders, you know, oftentimes they don't get this full amount that they're looking for as well. So lastly, the last part of this study that was done in 2021, the Small Business Credit Survey by the Federal Reserve Bank, is generally their applicants report a lower overall satisfaction. And overall, applicants cited fewer challenges with their lender experience. So let's look a little bit about, let's change the focus a little bit. There's our weighted cost of capital. I don't expect you to know that, but all this is up there for is if you do end up with 4 or 5 different streams of capital to start your business, they're going to be at different rates. And there's going to be a way that you could weight that to figure out your actual cost of capital. It's really quite easy if it's all debt compared to what you see there. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to reshare and go into a couple of places online where I spent a little bit of time. And one of those was with, I did spend some time with the Forbes advisors. I'll get to the Forbes people, but here is kind of our poll question today. So there's our poll question. And it was, where do they apply? And so this was in that online survey. Kind of gives the definition there of what they thought online lending should be. So still nationwide, still most people go to a large bank. And trust me, it's harder to get a loan oftentimes at a large bank than it is those other sources there. And oftentimes when people are denied, they don't come back. They don't realize that they might just be with the wrong lender. I remember when I was doing this in the 1990s, and there was a lender back then, it was probably like First Interstate Bank, and some bank like that, I'm not sure, but they had a big sign in their glass that said, we do SBA loans, and they did very, 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 very few SBA loans. So here's kind of the bullets that I pulled about our Black and Hispanic owned firms and smaller revenue are more likely to receive online lenders. And I'm getting to the problem that I have with online lenders, okay? High credit scores, and don't get me wrong, there is situations to where online lenders are a good capital source. It's just that in my experience, those have been fewer and farther in between. If you have a great deal out there, because they are very quick at getting capital to you. If you have something what you could purchase, be it some dramatically reduced asset from somebody who really needs cash, and you can get them that cash in 48 hours at a significant reduction in what it would cost you, obviously that's going to be a good reason to do this. The thing you have to check though is you have to check your cash flow. Many of these lenders, what they'll do is they have repayment based on every day, every week, or every month. So every day, week, or month, they're pulling money out of your checking account. You're not transferring the money, they are transferring it. And then there are additional fees if the money's not there. So really the cash flow is really something you got to look at. Oftentimes the annual percentage rate is, I think, too high. And oftentimes it's not disclosed. So you want to make sure it's disclosed if you go through one of these online lenders. And again, we're not having online lenders at our event, and it's for these reasons. And I wanted to spell out why we're not having them. So anyway, that's a little bit on online lenders. If I go to another source that I have, and I had used during these 135 weeks of this pandemic, we've used Forbes quite a bit for information. So when I just thought to go look and see what they would have for us on, hey, the best small business loans of October 2022. Hey, that's perfect. We have a Capital Summit coming up. It's October 7th. What are the best loans available? Well, the first thing I read here, and this was updated yesterday, was that they have in faded print that is hard to see right here, an editorial note about we earn a commission from partners links on Forbes advisors. Commissions do not affect our editors' opinions or evaluations. Okay, yeah, you say they don't. These are the best small business loans that are here. And when I started going through them, number one, that should be bolded. Any of our speakers at the Capital Summit, we are not earning a commission. We are inviting people who we see make a difference in our community. So then you get on here on Forbes Advisor, and I know people that have got loans on deck. They were great loans. For the mostly they were a little bit on the pricey side. They were very short term, and they tend to wreak havoc on cash flow. So you see some of this, and this is their best for short-term loans. And again, if you click here and apply, you could be earning the Forbes advisor a commission. Okay, I at least see the appearance of a conflict of interest, if nothing else. So then there's the On Deck, which is a fintech, which is an online lender. There's Lendio, and it shows you their pros and cons. On the pros and cons, it doesn't on any of these, the pros and cons, It gives the size of the loan that they'll go to and the same day funding and the low credit score. Okay, but as a con, you had to be in business for a year. You had to have $100,000 in minimum annual revenue, and they don't lend to businesses. See, for me, a con is going to be, what is the rate? What is the annual percentage rate that you're having to pay back? If they take it each day, it's going to be much more than if you pay once a month. So what is your annual percentage rate? And what is the term? What is the length of time that it is paid back? So Lendio, Cabbage is an interesting one. Cabbage was purchased by American Express Financial Services. They had a pretty good reputation. I believe they were started by Zions Bank in Utah. Amex bought them. Forbes will tell you why they picked them. And so let's see, why did they pick them? And here's the part that's telling to me, because I don't see anybody here telling me interest rates and terms. But Cabbage is at least coming up and at least disclosing that some of their lines of credits charge fees, and they are between 0.25% and 3.5%. Granted, that's in a month, that's per month. So if you looked at it on an annual percentage basis and you had 3.5%, your credit line is 42% on an annual percentage basis. 42%. Now, 3.5%, I know a lot of people would like that money. 42%, it could make sense for somebody. I'll say that. So, and then there's different rates as well, but a lot of them aren't even disclosed as far as what the rates are. And see, this isn't even an interest rate. It's a monthly fee based on if they carry a balance, on the balance they cover. So we're not even calling it, are we calling it even a loan with a term and interest? No, we're calling it basically carrying a balance and paying a fee based on that balance. The next one is Blue Vine. Not too familiar with Blue Vine, to be honest with you, because I don't look at these a lot, but they tell you why they picked it. And so Blue Vine also charges weekly or monthly fees. It's not an interest rate, it's a fee. A standard pricing is 1.7 per week or 7% per month. So 7% per month, 84% by my mathematics on an annual percentage basis. 84%, 1.7% times 52. It's going to be close to the same number we just came up with. So really looking into the details on here, and I don't really want to, discount any of these other entities that I don't really look at and really kind of look at, but I am just assuming that most of them are there for the same reason. So let's look at Biz2Credit. They were very active with the PPP loan, and I thought they were doing some pretty good stuff. Doesn't mention anything about the fees, the fee structure. I think they do a little bit more with SBA and traditionally type loans. At least in their working capital, they say they're paid back, although daily, weekly, or bi-monthly payments. So anyway, you're getting the idea. Not real happy, maybe some good information here. They gave the criteria, the methodology of how they picked their 15 popular lenders. Loan cost, 35%, seriously? Loan details, 25, experience, etc. Anyway, so you will not be seeing, and again, I can tell you that there are situations where this makes sense for some borrowers, but for the most, and for the ones that tend to need it the most, it's just trying to get to a point to where you can pay it off as quickly as possible. But of course, do check, because there very well could be a prepayment penalty. Okay, so that is that. I probably need to reshare here and go back to the PowerPoint. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I don't think I talked up my some of our programs that we had. So, well, let's go see what we have as far as questions. I do have one question. Is there a difference? Is there a different approach for funding if you set up an LCC versus a sole proprietor? The goal is using the EIN versus my social security number to keep separate. You know, it's going to, if you're, let's say, I'm going to take the assumption that you're going to be a single member LLC, and the differences there aren't going to be so much on the funding side of things. It's going to be on protecting your assets and just keeping it a separate entity. So it also makes it easier if you accept any type of investment later on. If you receive any type of angel or venture capital funding, oftentimes if you're giving up a percentage of your business, you can't do that as a sole proprietor. You're going to need to be an LLC or potentially even a S corporation. So it depends on kind of the direction of where you see things going. So for funding, I'm going to say there's not really going to be much difference at all. It's still going to come down on stating your case, putting together a good project, a good proposal. It's going to be actually have a business plan that makes sense with financial assumptions that your banker believes. You know, that's the most critical thing I see at the SBDC, and why we really like to see business plans and why we like to see financial projections. And that's because they need to make sense. Your lender sitting across from you is your first step to getting that particularly loan funded. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at your particular venture. They're going to set it into their mind. Does this make sense? Can they do this? Is this something they can pull off? Is this something that will work? So using that approach and trying to convince your particular lender, it's not going to really make much of a difference if you're an LLC or a sole proprietor. From a funding perspective, it's just that liability factor down the road. It's also if you plan on potentially taking other investments or partners or doing strategic partnerships to where there are maybe some funding percentages or ownership given to other entities. So that would be my answer there. Okay, so I don't see any other questions here. Going through the chat box, Maureen does have information on EIDL. She has information on the Capital Summit registration, both in person and on Zoom. And she has the information on the speakers that we went over in pretty good detail today. So some last tips on participating if you are going to be on the Capital Summit. The one with the speakers is important. Also, please know we are not going to take questions and answers during the summit. There's no Q&A during the Capital Summit. That is why it is so important to be able to email and ask the questions that you have. Listen to them. The criteria is not going to, you're not going to get a ton of eligibility criteria. You're going to get successful application, how it is used, kind of where the fees are and everything. Then it's best to contact that particular lender if particularly you are on a Zoom call with that. So that's one thing that you're going to want. We provided you the times today. There might be certain times that you want to jump in and jump out. And that will give you kind of a line on the particular programs and when they're going to be discussed. Sorry, for those of you that are joining us online, I will not be able to supply you with any of those delicious goodies from the Great Basin Bakery. But other than that, the content and delivery should be there. We will get the information to you, and we will have a Capital Summit either in person or on Zoom. So got another question or two, so thank you for asking. And oh, it's just a thank you. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, well, that's going to do it. I'm going to give you a few minutes back today. Going to take a lot more back on Friday if you're 10, but let's get out of here. Let's tell you we'll be back next week, and we'll figure out what we learn on Friday with the EIDL loan program, if it where it all fits in both the collateral aspect And maybe that other collateral support program from the Pollution Control Authority might come in handy in helping back up some of these deals. So looking forward to learning all this. So yeah, for our producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, I'm Kelly Bearden. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you Friday. Bye-bye, everybody.